Yeah. What is your brother's name?
Salika.
Okay.
Salika Prabhu. Well, thank you. Dear devotees, we thank you all for being here. We are very much blessed. Today is Wednesday, the 17th day of July 2024. And we have the blessed presence of Her Grace, Mother Malati Devi, who will be speaking to us from the blessed Srimad
Is,
Bhagavatam.
is your brother Salika in New Vrindavan?
Oh, he's a new renewal in spirit.
I'm in Nigeria.
Very nice choice of screensaver. Nice.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mother. So, this is fortune for today. We have Mother. Well, Mother, we don't know how to express our gratitude to you for coming to speak to us at least once in a month. It's so special.
Well, it's my great honor. It's my great honor, and I honestly look forward to meeting all of you once a month at least.
Yeah, thank you so much. We very
Was
appreciate it.
anybody here in Toronto this weekend for Rath Yatra?
I do not think so. We've been having like crashes of programs during the weekend, so I doubt. I usually used to go with my family, Chakras family and Govinda's family, Atma. We used to go annually to Toronto, but we've not been going for the past few days. I think since the COVID. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, it was a glorious Rath Yatra. I think the largest turnout ever, for I don't know when, because I go regularly.
Yeah.
The route's a little shorter now. Same route, but a little shorter. Like in New York, they made the route a little shorter, which
Okay.
is probably good. But on the island where the whole show ends up, it was
Yeah.
massively so just many devotees from everywhere.
Wow.
And many guest spectators, whatever. And there was a big competition this weekend because I never knew about this person, but there's a very hugely famous Punjabi singer, kind of modern singer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hugely famous. Even Trudeau, who's the prime minister, went to his show. So that was on the same day as our Rath Yatra, but and 50,000 people attended that show. It was a big stadium.
Ah.
But still, we had thousands and thousands of attendees. So Lord Jagannath is so magnetic. No matter and there was another show going on. So, two big shows, but still Lord Jagannath is so attractive that there was so many wonderful people attending his program and celebrating his presence.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. This must be a special honor to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami. I think this is the first Ratha Yatra since his physical disappearance. As most of us know, he was very, very influential in that zone, and he helped the zone so much.
He was an empowered soul sent by
Very
the Lord,
much.
definitely sent by Lord Chaitanya to help Srila Prabhupada spread this movement. There can be no
Yeah,
doubt about that.
yeah, yes. No doubt about that.
Shall we move on to the verse?
Yes, thank you so much, Mother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, are you going to put, otherwise I have it here.
Yes, I'm going to put it on this screen.
Okay. Otherwise, I can read it. I have it.
I have it on the screen. Can you see?
No, I don't see it. Oh,
Oh,
there it is. No
yes,
problem. It's there.
it's okay.
Okay. Can you just move it up a little bit? Okay, that's good. So we will now begin. This is 3:131. So the first verse here. And Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shemam Sakachit Yudana Este. Yafaluna Labda Danurahasya. Lebenya Sadok Sacha Sevayava. Vatim Tadyam Lativir Durapam. So that's the verse. And I'll say these synonyms if you can go up a little. Okay. Sheman means all good. Sahi. Kachit, weather. Yehudana. And this Yehudana is another name of Satyaki. I'll speak about him briefly. A stay is there. Yah, one who. Falgunat, from Arjuna. Labda, has achieved. Danu Rahasya, one who understands the intricacy of military art. Lebe, also achieved. Anjana, easily, adhoksajav, the transcendence. Sivaya, by service. Eva, certainly. Gatim, destination. Tadyam, transcendental. Latibi, by great renouncers. Durapam, very difficult to achieve. And now the translation. Uddhava is speaking here. So Vajra is asking the question. Oh, Uddhava, does Yudhana fare well? He learned the intricacies of the military art from Arjuna and attained the transcendental destination, which is very difficult to reach even for great renouncers. Up a little more. Okay. The destination of transcendence is to become the personal associate of the personality of Godhead, who is known as Adhoksaja, he who is beyond the reach of the senses. The renouncers of the world, the sannyasis, give up all worldly connections, namely family, wife, children, friends, home, and wealth, everything, to attain the transcendental bliss of Brahman happiness. But Adhoksaja happiness is beyond Brahman happiness. The empiric philosophers enjoy the transcendental quality of bliss by philosophical speculation on the supreme truth. But beyond that pleasure is the pleasure enjoyed by Brahman in his eternal form of the personality of Godhead. Brahman bliss is enjoyed by living entities after liberation from material bondage. But Parabrahman, the personality of Godhead, enjoys eternally a bliss of his own potency, which is called the Hladini potency. The empiric philosopher who studies Brahman by negation of the external features has not yet learned the quality of the Hladini potency of Brahman. Out of many potencies of the omnipotent, there are three features of his internal potency, namely Samvit, Sandini, and Hladini. In spite of their strict adherence to the principles of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Dhyana, Dharana, Pranayama, the great yogis and jnanis are unable to enter into the internal potency of the Lord. This internal potency is, however, easily realized by the devotees of the Lord by dint of devotional service. Few yogana achieve this stage of life, just as he achieved expert knowledge in military science from Arjuna, and thus his life was successful to the fullest extent from both the material and spiritual angles of vision. That is the way of devotional service to the Lord. Om Gyan Timirandasya Jananasakalaya Chakchun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskacha Desatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just 1 second, because I wanted to get one thing here. Can we close down the screen share? Okay, so I'm always looking to maybe find out something that Srila Prabhupada may have mentioned with regards to the, verses at hand. And it happens to be that really the verse he spoke about from the first chapter happened to be the first verse, but it's very interesting and very instructive. And the theme of it carries out throughout the entire narration. Just 1 second, I'm trying to find, okay, history, posted to okay, so there's always something to learn when you read through Prabhupada's purports or you hear his statements, particularly when in relationship to a particular chapter or a particular canto. So, the protagonist or the main person in this dialogue was Vidura. And he was a great devotee. He was also a great politician. Now, here I'm quoting Prabhupada. So you may think, what? Devotees aren't politicians. Like recently, just like the last few days, there was big arguments among devotees due to politics. So there are people who think, although they're wrong, that this American politician who's running for president, again, he was the president, he got defeated, and now he's going to try again. They were saying that he was getting the mercy of Lord Jagannath because on 1976 or 77, on the first Rath Yatra in New York City, he gave use of a area for them in the city for them to build the Rath carts. But it turns out that's what we call a urban legend, or it's in ISKCON mythology. It's not really true. But in the course of the discussion, a couple days ago, 3 days ago, there was an attempt to assassination of this person. And I'm purposely not even going to say his name. You all, if you follow the news, you know who I mean. So it failed. His ear was just slightly grazed by the bullet. And everybody, the ISKCON people, just see, Lord Jagannath saved him. Now, what's really interesting is where this attempt happened. This attempt to kill the man happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And hopefully you all know the significance in our history of Butler, Pennsylvania, right? Butler, Pennsylvania is the first place that Prabhupada traveled to by Greyhound bus, by the way, when he arrived in America. in 1965. So there are politics, there are politics. But Prabhupada said, Vidura, great devotee, great politician, but not that a devotee should take part in politics. So, they should know everything, they know everything, but they don't take part. So just like Vidura and his elder brother, Dhritarashtra was a politician. His whole life was diplomacy and politics. And at the same time, when he was in a difficult position, he used to consult Vidura. Vidura was a saintly character. He didn't get involved in the nonsense of the court. So why should a politician consult a devotee? So Prabhupada said, if I want to do something, I must take the best advice from the best man. That's the principle. And political suggestions by Vidura are known as expert. Just like, in modern times, Pandit Chanaka Pandit, he's considered an authority and good counsel in both political and moral instructions. He's not a bhakta, but he's a moral character, and he was the guider of in politics. Many of his sayings have actually been misunderstood, like the one about never trust a woman or a politician. Misunderstood, but I don't have time to get into that. But I'll say that it was at a time, this was said at a time when politicians would pit themselves, against other politicians. And often they would try to kill your opponent. And one way they did it was to send in a beautiful woman who had learned how to tolerate poison. And then she'd have this poison in her mouth that would not kill her, but when she would kiss the other person, because the person would look and like, oh, this beautiful woman, and would not be able to control his senses, then she would inject that poison in the mouth and the person would die. So that's that saying. But the, unfortunate modern mind goes, any woman, every woman, don't trust women or a politician. But that was not really the actual, intention in him saying that. So also, he was giving advice on, Vidura. He was like an expert advisor and counselor. So he would give advice on ordinary things. And the Chanaka Sloka is evidence, like an example that a man who's learned, a man who's very rich, how can they be compared? Well, Chanaka Pandit says there is no comparison. And he explained that by comparison, there must be where points of similarity. Like you could compare an apple to an orange. They're both a fruit, they both grow on a tree, they both contain seeds, some similarity. But in the case of a learned man or a rich person, no comparison. The comparison must be there when there are points of similarity. An analogy means there must be points of similarity. And that the greatest number of similarity, then that makes the analogy perfect. So this is, a rule of logic. So Chanaka Pandit says that to a rich man and a learned man, there's no comparison. They're different categories. And why? Because Swadeshi Pujate Rajavidan Sarvatra Pujate. So a rich man, a king, may be very respectful in his own, and respected in his own country among his own men. But Vidvat, a learned scholar, he is respected all over the world. And that was actually the case of Vidura. And then Tribhuvane Manyo from the Sat Goswami Astikam. Tribhuvane Manyo, one who's respected all over the world, if he's respected in his own village, how can there be a comparison? So in all over the world, you're respected if you're learned. The Sat Goswamis, for example, they were the friend of the ruffians and the dacoits are the gentlemen alike. Gentleman or ruffian, they both respected them, the Sat Goswamis. So that is a sign of a learned person. And Prabhupada said, these instructions are valuable. So who's a learned scholar? And someone will say, well, you know, if you have your MA, your PhD, blah, 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 you're a learned scholar. Chanakya Pandit refused. He says, no, that's not the criterion. You know, to simply hold a degree from the university examination, that's not the test of becoming a learned scholar. That, then, you know, what is the test? So then it's explained three things. Matravat paradareshu, except for one's married wife, one sees all women like mothers. That's a learned scholar. Paradaveshu lostravat, and he sees others' property, just like garbage in the street. And atmavat sarvabhuteshu ya pashyati sa pandita, and you will see everyone by equal vision. So if one is required by education, there must be some effect. And these are the tests to know if one is advanced in education, treats all women as his mother, even if it's a young girl, he'll dress mother, you know, that's the etiquette. Brahmachari is supposed to live in the Gurukul at the place of the Guru, just like a menial servant. Even Krishna, he lived as a menial servant. In the ashram of his teacher. And his teacher asked him to come, bring some fuel from the jungle, and he went with Sudama Vipra. And while collecting the dry wood, there was a storm, a heavy rain, just like up in Toronto yesterday, and even on Sunday afternoon. Heavy rain, like you're having this beautiful sunshine, all of a sudden, just like, where'd this come from? Darkness all around, bang, all this water, not little sweet drips, like we just had a little sweet drips here. No, it was, you know, torrential rains were coming down. Even houses were getting flooded. Looked like they put a post where this famous rapper, it shows him in his house up to his ankles in water, and the water's just rushing in like a river. So Krishna went with Sudama. They're collecting some dry woods. And there was a storm. They were in the forest, there was a storm. And then from the storm, heavy rain, and they became lost in the jungle. So then the teacher, Sandipani Muni, he understood when they didn't come, they must be lost. So he, with the assistance of other boys, they went out and rescued them. So this is the position of brahmachari. They collect alms for the Gurukul. It's not for themselves or their family or their sense gratification. So Krishna consciousness includes varieties of activities. And Prabhupada was saying, in a press conference, they asked me whether your students take part in politics. Is it sanctioned? And he answered, why not? Our Bhagavad Gita is produced in the battlefield. So why should I deride battle? No. When there's a need for fighting, there must be fighting. The world is like that. Otherwise, there is no need of fighting. But still, there is a class of men who will fight. And when there is a fight, those who are meant for military purpose, they will fight. Not that the civilian or ordinary citizen goes and fights. So in the society, there must be a division, not that everybody should be called, come on, you go fight. You know, where's the training? That's not the system. So first of all, the Shatur Vanyam Maya Shrishtam from Bhagavad Gita 4:13, the children, according to strict Vedic principles, by practical psychology, they should be tested. What is the tendency of this boy? There can be 4 kinds of tendencies: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. So some child is to become a Brahmana, some child will become Kshatriya, some child will become Vaishya, and the rest Sudra. Sudra doesn't require any training. Ordinary worker class. Otherwise, the other 3, especially the 2, the Brahmana and Kshatriya, they require, Prabhupada said, they require very magnificent training because they will administer the whole affairs of society. Just think of the importance that is there for those in that category, the Kshatriya and the Brahmanas. They will administer the whole affair of society. So the Brahmanas, they would give advice to the Kshatriyas. And the Kshatriyas, according to their advice, they would rule over the citizens. And, that was the system. The Chaturvarnya Maya Shristam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. And we learned that from Bhagavad Gita 4:13. So this Vibhagasha, by division of quality and work. So a Brahmana must be qualified and at the same time work as a Brahmana. So we're training our students, Prabhupada was saying that we're training our students to become qualified Brahmana. We cannot take up all the other departments right now. Similarly, others may take up the line of training. So there are training classes, organized methods to train the mercantile men, the administrators, and the Brahmanas. So everything is working under the design of the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada was mentioning, like, when the British occupied India, history lesson, the British ruled over India for like decades and decades. And when they did, they had to give pensions according to the share. So amongst the Mohammedans also, they were getting pensions. And it was mentioned polygamy was allowed. So of course, polygamy is the practice of having more than one wife, and it was allowed. Hindus, especially the higher class, Brahmana and Kshatriyas, polygamy was allowed. And of course, now polygamy is banned. It's illegal, but it was quite natural because based upon the principle, if every woman must be married, then polygamy must be there. Otherwise, how will every woman get a husband? Because the male population is historically less than the female population. So I saw that statement by Prabhupada and I said, let me, I've always heard it. And I said, yeah, if Prabhupada says that, I'm accepting. But I know nowadays people don't accept even Prabhupada. So I said, let me find what is historical fact on this. And in fact, it's true. Historically, in all but 4 or 5 countries, the male population is the lesser population. So that means, and then you're going to have out of the male population those who are renunciates. So that takes away the number 2. So there is that the odd number of that the ladies there are more ladies than men, and there's not enough men, and then some of the men, they become renunciates. So it's a natural thing if a lady's to be protected by a husband that there would be polygamy. Anyways, I'm not promoting it, I'm just explaining the idea behind it. So Vidura was born from a maidservant via yoga, and his father was elevated Vyas, who also fathered Dhritarashtra and Pandu from different mothers. So this Niyoga, we understood that because of the situation there was not a male progeny to carry on. And so this was a Hindu practice, primarily followed in the ancient period. And it was permitted for widows or wives who had no child by their spouse to create a child with another designated person. And the purpose was to ensure the continuation of the family lineage and mitigate the financial and social precariousness that a childless widow would have faced in society. Now, in Kali Yuga, Brihaspati has forbidden Niyoga. And there were like restrictions. The restrictions were that the women would agree only if it was for the sake of rightfully having a child, and the child would be considered the child of the husband and wife, not the appointed person, and therefore only permitted for childbirth, not for, sexual pleasure. And the appointed man wouldn't seek any paternal relationship or have any attachment to the child in the future. He did his duty, that was it, overdone. But to avoid misuse, a man was allowed a maximum of 3 times in his lifetime to be appointed in that way. You have to see it as a service, as a duty. And it will be seen, the activity will be seen as that of Dharma. And while doing so, the man and woman will only have dharma in mind, not passion, not lust, not pleasure. And the man will do it to help the woman in the name of God, and the woman will accept it only to bear a child for herself, and if the husband is alive, for the husband. Just like we know the story of Kunti, she could call somebody a demigod, and her husband could not have children. If he did, bang, he would die. So he consented. You know, when he found out she had that boon, yes, call somebody. And of course, we know that came out, Yudhisthira, Arjuna, etc. And then there was other strict restrictions on the activity, and it said that the bodies of the male and female were smeared with ghee, and then there was a curtain between the male and female so they wouldn't see each other's faces, to avoid passion sneaking into their minds, that only the legs were kept uncovered. So you know, that was just some of the restrictions. It wasn't there for having, you know, extramarital affairs. It wasn't there for sense gratification. And then there had to be at least a 6 month passage of time. And the woman must have offered funeral oblations to her husband with the approval of her brother or father and the relatives of the husband, and they would consult the gurus of the family, and then she could choose the man to have the issue. And then the restrictions on the women were if she was characterless, she was mad, she was diseased, or she was very aged, old, then that person was not entitled to niyogam, to this niyoga. And also if the person was sickly, that wouldn't work out. And the lady had to be economically independent of that person who that she appoints. And she would have to provide the necessary expenses for food, unguents, etc., from the estate of her departed husband. So there were these restrictions there to make sure that things would be properly achieved. There was one ruler, Raj Singh. He was the Kalachuri ruler in Haya, and he begot a son from this process on the advice of his Brahmin counselors. So it wasn't just, you know, something with Vidura. And actually, I found out there was a big film that was like in 2003, and the central issue was around yoga. It was like showcased at an international film festival. So it's, you know, it's something that people are interested in, but they have to really understand it in the proper context. And most people in the proper, you know, in this day and age, they can only kind of think in terms of sense gratification. Therefore, it's prohibited, it's not allowed, just like polygamy is also not allowed. Sorry. So Vidura, coming from a lesser, his mother was a maidservant. He had no share in the throne. At the same time, Dhritarashtra loved him very much because of his intelligence. And whenever there was an important occasion, he would consult him. And his consultation was so valuable. Later on, it was known as Vidurikam, or consultation as expert as given by Vidura. So at that time, diplomacy and politics were going on, how to cheat the Pandavas. They didn't like it that the Pandavas were going to be having any type of connection with the throne. So there were the 5 Pandavas. Their father died early. They had, you know, they were minor children. So Dhritarashtra, the brother of his child, he took charge for the maintenance of the Pandavas. And he still had this mindset. I couldn't be elevated to the throne because I was blind. He was born blind. So actually the kingdom belongs to me anyway. But my brother occupied the throne and now he's dead and gone. So why should his sons be the king? My son should be the king. So that was the politics. And he was trying to see that the Pandavas would be killed, and Vidura understanding, he was restricting them, he was restraining them, you know. So he was always there in all many different types of situations that were occurring at that time. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's, well, there's another thing that was brought out in this chapter. The questions and answers among different classes of men have different have different values. So like inquirers of a mercantile or business person, they can't be expected to be highly purposeful in spiritual values. In other words, you don't go to the bank manager with an elevated spiritual question. The questions and answers by different class of men can be guessed by the caliber of the person concerned. So in the Gita, there was discussion between Krishna and Arjuna, and the supreme person and the supreme devotee, respectively. And the Lord admitted Arjuna to be his devotee and friend in Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, any sane man can guess that the discussion was on the topic of the Bhakti Yoga system. And in fact, the whole Bhagavad Gita is based on the principle of Bhakti Yoga. And there's a difference between karma and karma yoga. And that's explained that karma is regulated action for the enjoyment of the fruit by the performer. But karma yoga is action performed by the devotees for the satisfaction of Lord Krishna. So in this verse, there was also mention of Satyaki, Yehudana. So Yehudana, he was killed in the Yadava drunken brawl that eradicated the Yadukulas. And that was a result of a curse that Gandhari had made on Krishna for overseeing the fall of the Kauravas. It all started with a quarrel between Satyaki and Kritavarna. So Yudhana, in other words, Satyaki, he was very powerful Yadava. He was a chieftain of Narayana Sen, and he belonged to the Vrishni clan, which is Krishna's family. And according to the Puranas, he was the grandson of Shini of the Vrishni clan, and his teacher was Arjuna. And therefore, he was fighting on the side of the Pandavas. But he was very involved. And according to the moral instructions of Pandit Chanika, what's the use of a son who is neither a learned man nor a devotee of the Lord? So if a son is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he was described as just like a person with blind eyes, a source of trouble. And that was exactly the nature of Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana. So like a devotee is always in the renounced temperament, because worldly attractions can't satisfy a devotee. Vidura, he was never attracted by the royal palace of his brother. He was always ready to leave that place and devote himself completely to transcendental loving service of the Lord. And then he got the opportunity by the grace of Duryodhana, who insulted him beyond, it was unbelievable how he insulted him. But instead of being sorry at the strong words of insult, Vidura thanked him from within because it gave him a chance to live alone in holy places and fully engage in devotional service of the Lord. It's this word, gata vyata, without being sorry. So that was Vidura. He was relieved from the tribulations which trouble every man and tangled in material activities. And he left the palace, Gatavyataha, without being sorry. He said he put his bow at the doorstep. He didn't take it with him. So pure devotee of the Lord, he's never perturbed by awkward positions created by the external energy of the Lord, as is explained in Gita 3:27. People are so much like concerned, oh, why is this happening to me? why do bad things happen to good people? And, this is like the endless loop going on. But a pure devotee is never perturbed by awkward positions, knowing they are created by the external energy of the Lord. And yata vyata, never being sorry. So Vidura was definitely a highly elevated and pious soul. Otherwise, he would not have taken his birth in the Kurva family, wealthy family connected to the Lord. So to have high parentage, to possess wealth, to be highly learned, to have great personal beauty, all of this is due to past pious activities. And we see this even today. So like they were having in the news some pictures like the ISKCON news, and also, newspapers in India. So there was this, really fabulously wealthy family, the Ambanis, unbelievable, massive amounts of wealth. And the Ambani son got married, and this marriage was like the highlight of the year for most of India. It was like when they were choosing the date, they were very careful not to conflict with any other important dates, like a soccer game, like that's very important for India. Or, something like, anyway, they very careful to choose the date. And they invited all kinds of fabulously well-known performers, singers, actors, different types of people. And among the people they invited and paid their way was these people called the Kardashians. They're like, I don't even know how to describe these people. They're always in the news for doing something, usually getting remarried or divorced or whatever. But anyway, they're fabulous. I think they're called influencers, just beyond, they're just known everywhere. So these Kardashian sisters, Kim and Chloe, they also came to this wedding. But after the wedding, the mercy of the Lord really came on them. Remember, they took a birth in high parentage, they had great wealth. I mean, they were educated, these girls. Like one of them has a degree from, I forget where, Harvard, one big university. They're beautiful, or they're considered beautiful by material standards. All of this past pious acts. So here are these Kardashians. They're there at this fabulous big wedding. Also, we have to say that there were two ISKCON devotees, Radhanath Swami and His Grace Gauranga. They were there. So after the wedding, Gauranga and Radhanath Swami took these Kardashian sisters and they were showing them around some of the ISKCON projects. They took part in a food distribution service. And you see them there with their fancy clothes on, but they were just like walking and among the lines of these kids and serving them prasad. But then they came to the Chopadi temple, and there's a beautiful picture of one of the sisters bending forward and offering flowers to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. So that was, their good fortune. Their good fortune, they took that birth, but in such a high level of wealth and, ability of having good higher education, personal beauty. But the actual result of all that was to see them there serving by offering flowers to Srila Prabhupada. And that is really what one should do if they have these opportunities. So such pious possessions, at the same time, pious possessions, birth, and all that are not sufficient for obtaining the grace of the Lord. And to be engaged in his transcendental loving service. That happens through the mercy of the devotees. So by the mercy of Radhanath Swami and Gauranga, these sisters, they were given an entry level, here, offer some flowers to Prabhupada. And you can see their face, their close-up shot, they're not posing, they're actually considering this as an honor. So Vidura considered himself less pious. Of course he wasn't, but that was his humility. And therefore, after this whole scene with the palace where he's insulted, he decided to travel all over the world to all the holy places of pilgrimage. Why? In order to achieve greater piety and advance nearer to the Lord. So at that time, Krishna was personally present in the world. So certainly Vidura could have just gone directly to him, but he didn't do that because he felt he was not sufficiently freed from sin. Because the places of pilgrimage are meant for eradicating the sins of the pilgrims. They're distributed all over the universe just to give facility to all the concerned. Why? For attaining pure existence and God realization. And just like Srila Prabhupada has created these places of pilgrimage, Gita Nagari, New Vrindavan, any one of the ISKCON temples, these are places of pilgrimage, and they're there to help one become further advanced in God consciousness. So one shouldn't go to we always hear, don't go to the places of pilgrimage just, to maybe take a bath or get a blessing. No, we should go there to offer service. And more importantly, be very eager to meet the great souls who are already there, engaged. The great souls are there, engaged in the service of the Lord. The Chaitanya Charitamrita says this, Sarvatra Prakasha Tandra Bhakti Sukatite Jakatera Dharma Nashi Dharma Stapate Stapite. The Lord has so distributed himself all over the universe just to give pleasure to the devotees. Means he has his forms, his murti forms all over, to give pleasure to the devotees, to give the common man facility to eradicate his sins and establish religious principles all over the world. So there's a reason for everything. And even if the holy places are covered up, which quite that happened even in Lord Chaitanya's time, and therefore he sent the 6 Goswamis to, excavate them. And in every country, you will find there are holy places of pilgrimage. Even in the most fallen countries, like, America is not a land necessarily known for a land of saintly peoples. Mostly we're known for our, we're malachas, what can we say? And yet Krishna has established himself. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, transcendental places of pilgrimage have sprung up in different places all throughout America. And there are also places that from other established, authorized spiritual practices, they also have their special places of pilgrimage within America. So the first and foremost duty of a pilgrim is to satisfy the Supreme Lord Hari. So while you're traveling in a pilgrimage, then we don't have to be worried about pleasing society. That's not our business. There's no need to, depend upon social formalities or occupation or dress. The main thing is to remain always absorbed in the function of pleasing the Lord. Haritosana, So the history of the world cannot give any systematic account for more than 3,000 years in the past. There's speculation, but before the whole world, previously, it was under the flag and military strength of Maharaj Yudhisthira, and he was the emperor of the entire world, of the planet. So now Prabhupada, he makes this point, at present there are hundreds of flags flapping in the United Nations, but during the time of Vidura, there was, by the grace of Lord Krishna, only one flag. And then there's this famous comment, no one goes to the forest to set it on fire. Now, we can see how fallen Kali Yuga is, because now, indeed, people do go to the forest to set fires. But normally, it's like due to friction between bamboo or between wood. Like you rub it, by the wind, and fire takes place, and then the entire forest is burnt. But similarly, in the greater forest of worldly transaction, the fire of war takes place because of violent passion of the conditioned souls illusioned by external energy. And this worldly fire can only be extinguished by the water cloud of mercy of the saintly personalities, just like a forest fire can be extinguished only by the rains falling from a cloud. And thus each morning we are singing Samsara Davana Lila Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Gana Tvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya Bande Guru Sri Sharanarvindam, that we offer our obeisances at least 3 times a day to the saintly personalities of our spiritual masters, who alone can save us by distributing the mercy of the Lord. So the great sages and the demigods, they never established statues of men or demigods. They established temples of Vishnu for the benefit of the common man, to raise them to the platform of God consciousness. Now, I touched upon this, sometimes people of less intelligence, of a less worldly, they have a grasp of worldly intelligence, but they have no innate spirituality. So like, why am I getting this problems, this and that? I mean, we saw how Prahlad Maharaj was getting all kinds of problems, and in spite of that, he never said, why me, why this, no. He went and meditated on the instructions of his spiritual master. So in the Mahabharat, Karna asked Lord Krishna, he says, my mother left me the moment I was born. Kunti was his mother. She put him in a stream, in a basket. My mother left me the moment I was born. Is it my fault I was born an illegitimate child? Because he was having problems. Who's your putra? Who are you from? He didn't know. Is it my fault? I didn't get the education from Duryodhana because I was considered not a legitimate Kshatriya. Parsuram taught me, but then gave me the curse to forget everything when he came to know I was the son of Kunti belonging to a Kshatriya. A cow was accidentally hit by my arrow and its owner cursed me. No fault of mine. I was disgraced in Draupadi's Swayambar. He wasn't allowed to compete. And even Kunti finally told me the truth. It was only to save her other sons. Whatever I received was through Duryodhana's charity. So how am I wrong to take his side? Because you might wonder, how was it that, Karna, the son of Kunti, could fight the other side? So he's asking, and Krishna replies, Karna, I was born in jail. Death was waiting for me even before my birth. The night I was born, I was separated from my birth parents. From childhood, you grew up hearing the noise of swords, chariots, horses, bows, and arrows. I only got one cow's shed, cow dung, and multiple attempts on my life, even before I could walk. No army, no education. I could hear people saying, I'm the reason for all their problems. When all of you were being appreciated for your valor by your teachers, I had not even received any education. And this is very interesting. I joined the Gurukul of Rishi Sandipani Muni only at the age of 16. We're thinking, oh, cute little Krishna and Balaram, but no, 16 years old. He went to Gurukul. Of course, he advanced quickly. In 64 days, he was perfectly learned. So he goes on, he says to Karna, you are married to a girl of your choice. I didn't get the girl I loved. I rather ended up marrying those who wanted me are the ones I rescued from demons. I had to move my whole community from the banks of the Yamuna to far off seashore to save them from Jarasandha. And I was called a coward for running away. So if Duryodhana wins the war, you'll get a lot of credit. What do I get if Dharmaraj wins the war? Only the blame for the war and all the related problems. Just remember, Karna, everyone has a challenge in life to face. So Duryodhana was constantly this is like a theoretical conversation, but the points are valid. So Vidura was always there, even though the very family members they exiled him. They didn't want to see his face. He remained their well-wisher, and he understood everyone has a challenge in life to face. And if we face that challenge on behalf of Krishna, then our life will definitely become successful. So those are a few words that I have kind of put together for this. And if anybody, we've got a couple minutes. If anybody has a couple questions, I could try.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mother, for sharing this depth of wisdom and love with us today. Devotees, if anyone may have questions, realizations, comments you would like to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to speak. Well, it's very interesting, Mother, you were sharing about the Kardashians' visits to the temple. Some of us have seen some of the photos, and it's very encouraging that Krishna's mercy is unlimited, and no one can determine whom Krishna wants to bless or grace. So we're very appreciative and thankful that they also come in contact with Shri Krishna and have this humble, submissive attitude towards Guru and Krishna. My question is, I don't think it's particularly connected to the text discussed today, but Srila Prabhupada, as I understand, was very, very particular about cleanliness. Like if Srila Prabhupada visited a temple, he observes many things. One particular thing he observes is how clean the environment is.
Absolutely. He was supremely clean, and he expected us to be revolutionary clean.
Yeah. So my question, I haven't been to Vrindavan before, but I was talking to this devotee, a Vaishnavi devotee. Of course, she lives in India, and she was explaining to me how externally, physically, materially speaking, filthy Vrindavan is. And of course, the scriptures tell us not to look at the external filth we might see, because Vrindavan is Vrindavan. Now, my question is, how would devotees who are supposed to keep cleanliness, because cleanliness, according to Srila Prabhupada, is godliness, and not keep Vrindavan, the land of the Lord, clean? Is it like a way of trying to see who is visiting the dam with material vision, and they may say some negative things and get reaction from that? I just can't understand why devotees will not keep the place clean.
There are many bewildering factors in Krishna's Leela. But when you examine, you can see he doesn't want the infidels there, and the people who are not after Krishna, they'll go somewhere else. This place is too filthy. Let me get out of here. But the whole thing is actually a covering by Prodamaya, by the Yogamaya energy to dispel. It's the material energy putting like an umbrella over Krishna to hide the real glories from the eyes of those who are not fit to see it. That is the understanding of those who have, I'm repeating what I've heard, from have higher understanding.
Hmm. Well, but I guess if we go by what you're sharing with us as what you've heard, that should not be the idea of keeping our temples. Of course,
No,
we don't do that.
we should not we should not imitate the material energy.
Yeah.
And neither should we think we're so advanced that we can slough off and say, well, in Vrindavan, that's ridiculous. If you look at the major temples in Vrindavan, especially since Prabhupada's time, because when we first went there, most of them were pretty shabby.
Mm.
But when they saw how ISKCON came up, their deities, they weren't dressed nicely. It's totally been transformed. And that's Srila Prabhupada. That's Krishna. Used Srila Prabhupada to reestablish the actual glories of Vrindavan, but then he's keeping it, through Prodamaya, Mahamayas. She's working under Krishna's direction to make sure that it doesn't become part of the agenda of the materialistic people to exploit and enjoy. They're doing that already. But for the devotees, that is very superficial.
Mm.
And it's very shameful that we cannot understand the need to keep our temples, our devotees, our hearts immaculate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you going to be next just going to, speaking of the Lord, I'm going back to Jagannath Swami, this coming weekend on Sunday, the 21st, Rath Yatra in Michigan, at Novi, Michigan. So those who can make it there, please come. Promises to be a very wonderful Rath Yatra, it always is. And then the following Saturday, Jai, Gita Nagari Rath Yatra Ki Jai.
Jai! We hope to see you in Gitanagri.
Oh, I'm definitely coming.
2 weeks away. Hare Krishna.
Oh.
Hare Krishna.
So
go ahead, man.
Yeah, I have to move on to another today because I've been away. I only came back last night. I was in Toronto for the Rath Yatra. So now I have a stack up of things I have to do, this thing move along. So I have to take your leave, but I will be seeing you either in Detroit or definitely in Gitanagari.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I knew you were away.
I'm still making plans next year for Gana Rath Yatra.
Yay! Hare Krishna. Hare Hare. Yeah, I knew you were away because I asked of you. I could not go to New Vrindavan for the Rath, so I was asking how you were doing. They said, "Oh, you were not there." They think you had traveled, so I say, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I left. I was there I had all little garlands for everybody. I'll be bringing also to Gitanagari, and bubble machine to put on the cart, so there was cheerful bubbles. So that was my contribution to the Rath Yatra in New Vrindavan, and I will do the same for Gitanagari.
Jai. Well, dear devotees, I think we all heard Mother. She has to move on to another engagement. And with that being said, we're going to humbly request you all to unmute, and we all chant the loudest Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered Auntie Grace Mother Malati Devi. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yamcha kalpatarischa drupasindhubhyevacha Nityanam Bhavanabhyo
By grace, Mother Malati Devi Dasi Ki.
Jai.
His co-founder, Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
All glories to assemble devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
You all somewhere again soon, Hare Krishna.